Before we go into the substance of the conversation, James, a little bit of an icebreaker. We know that artificial intelligence is everywhere. Generative AI. People are starting to include it in their workflows with ChatGPT and other solutions. James, when you hear AI for impact, what's the first word or emotion that comes to mind for you, James, and why?
Um, that is a that's a good question. I I think the first word that comes to mind for me is probably intention. Um, and I think that for me, the key to being highly intentional with a tool, especially the more powerful the tool is to know as much as you can about the tool, as much as you can about what's going in, so you can know as much as you can about what's coming out. And so, yeah, I'm highly excited by a lot of the things coming out, and it pushes me to understand ways to use them critically and intentionally pointed towards a focused outcome with an ability to really know what I'm doing versus what it's doing and yeah, wielding it responsibly.
Thank you for that, James. Your word of intention, really critical. And just jumping in, following up on that theme, for our listeners, they're on the front lines of addressing the housing crisis in the country or preparing income owners who are on the lower strata of the income ladder to get career pathways into good family sustaining jobs and career pathways. We're talking to a group of frontline leaders who have very compelling mission outcomes, trying to figure out where AI can play a role in accelerating towards those outcomes, don't necessarily know where to start. And you've mentioned the word intentional. And one of the areas that we want to talk about today to be intentional is about the quality of data that feeds AI. And I think that from my conversations with leaders on the front lines across the country, there's an interest in AI, but not really clarity about what shape data needs to be in for it to be in a place where artificial intelligence can actually be a benefit rather than a cost to our mission and our outcome. So, in your estimation, James, from talking to a lot of folks on the front lines, as well as working yourself on the technical side with frontline leaders, what is the biggest risk as you see it to frontline leaders and their success as it relates to data quality?
Um, I would say that I haven't been on the inside of every organization out there, obviously, but from what I've seen, a real pain point is again what I mentioned earlier, this ETL, which is in broad, it stands for extract, transform, and load, but in broad strokes, it's a a kind of a practice and a pipeline of cleaning and making data accessible and interoperable between use cases or just kind of between data sources. And I've seen organizations that struggle to take on or envision kind of the execution of larger projects or scaling up projects simply because of the task of dealing with the unwieldy silos of data and information. And I think that in various domains and across kind of across project areas, across interest areas, across impact areas, I see a lot of different versions of the ETL daemon pop up, and it's something that I think with an end-to-end understanding, greater fluency, and a greater sort of operation strategy married to a technical strategy is the best version of that I have seen, and so kind of spreading that understanding is as well as building that technical supporting layer has been a goal and focus of mine at CDX of how do we kind of bake this into our processes and think about this kind of holistically, both as it affects us, but also as we are sure and see it affects other people.
And James, can you give an example? We've been talking to a number of frontline organizations who are addressing the housing crisis, for example, and there's some common data sets that they use in order to try to deliver better outcomes in terms of the services they provide. Could you just, maybe share a powerful use case of how ETL plays out, or the lack thereof plays out in that very specific use case and domain?
Yeah. So um, one of these groups or a few of these groups were ideating about connecting two data sources of HMIS data, homeless management information services, housing management information services, and LMS data, learning management services, and trying to draw connections, understand the relationship between learning programs, interventions for employment, trainings, interventions, and their impact and efficacy on reducing houselessness and homelessness in an area. And one of the chief difficulties in connecting those two, kind of really the crux just between that would be being able to effectively correlate those records between individuals, and all of the kind of knotty problems that come with identifying individuals who may have similar names. For example, John Smith on this street, John Smith on that street, and even more difficult because we're talking about folks who don't have housing. So that address being a common linking factor that's commonly used when connecting an Amazon system with another subscription-based system as something more simple. You don't have that common connecting piece. So all of a sudden that job becomes even more complex and difficult. And so you really benefit from having a strategy and a sort of and to be able to get creative, to be fluent in traditional techniques, systems, tools available to us for ETL, but also to be able to kind of get creative, like we kind of have the privilege of doing it at CDX, and looking to either side of ETL, for ways of reducing stress to kind of that piece of the workflow or the pipeline. Looking ahead of ETL, working with organizations directly to see, what can be done to help correlate information without, exposing people's personal ID or compromising security in any way. And then working downstream with tools like natural language processing, large language models, and machine learning to identify and capture patterns that, might be able to reduce some of that stresses of ETL as well, and also not compromise personal identities. So, yeah, that's a bit of a deep dive on that specific case, but I hope it was informative. Yeah.
And what would it cost an organization, both in terms of time, in terms of, at the status quo, if they didn't take that more deliberate and intentional approach to cleaning and transformation of the data across those various data sets that you were talking about, James? What would it cost both an organization and what does it cost society, from a societal, social return on investment perspective?
I think to very a spectrum of from just a lot of time and headache and money and focus and Tylenol to address this in a way that is a little bit of constantly needing to reassess sometimes even your own mistakes or whatever, to all the way to really not being able to effectively pull off these interventions, or pull out these insights, not be able to execute on these projects because the data isn't quality enough really to act on. And so I would say, like, the cost, depending on how you look at it, can be immeasurable. Like we have you know a pressing need to understand the relationships between our interventions and their outcomes, and that's direct relationships, but that can also be second order relationships that can be more complex relationships that we can only start to understand and look at and analyze when we have a clean building base to start from. And so this being a headache area for some of the groups that need it most is one of the is one of the things that informs my perspective, that just it costs us as society a whole lot. We have done a really good job for this when it comes to figuring out who subscribed to Netflix from what ad on what page, and who clicked on what Facebook banner in order to get to where. And so I'm sure we can do just as good of a job understanding how our learning interventions, our housing interventions are, reducing harm on the ground.
Well said. It's definitely a cost in terms of outcomes that you mentioned. There's a cost in terms of time. A lot of that data cleaning and transformation, James, as you know, is being done manually right now. And people who start working at an organization because they're inspired by the mission, spend most of their time doing data cleaning, data deduplication, organizing all of these different schema into a unified schema, but doing it manually across different spreadsheets. And so there's a cost in terms of the time that's not focused on mission, that's lost as well. And then from a monetary perspective and a cost benefit analysis, James, I think many organizations are going out and bringing in software as a service tools like Power BI or Tableau or other business intelligence systems, and they're spending money on those systems, but not necessarily on the other side of it getting the bang for their buck in terms of the insights that would be generated with more clean data. So those are three factors where there's a tremendous cost to organizations going about it with the status quo and addressing the pain point that you've been talking through, James, here, that cleaning and transformation stage, or ETL, as it's referred to, that process can reduce cost and really lead to greater benefits. James, at CDX Data, when we work with our clients, as you know, we always start off with a plan and design phase where we get to know a little bit more about their internal operations, what their data strategy is, their logic model, working backwards from outcomes and impact. James, could you talk a little bit about, in terms of the challenges of data quality at that cleaning and transformation stage, are there things that can be done at the data ingestion phase that would set organizations up to be more successful in the cleaning and transformation of these very diverse data sets when they're trying to build an end-to-end data management system?
Uh, definitely. Definitely. And obviously, everything is somewhat situationally dependent. It depends on sources that these organizations are working with, and also that goal, that logic model, how they're determining their impact. But there are numerous strategies that you can implement at the ingestion phase, whether it's understanding a little bit about how the shape of your overall database or data sync solution wants to ingest data, and being able to separate, say forms that are human readed, operated, and helmed versus a version that would just be for your systems. Having redundancies, version control in a number of senses is a tool that's built into a lot of systems that organizations are using. Getting familiar with those tools such that you can understand and roll back certain versions of data also is phenomenal. And yeah, having I think um, an understanding of the goal of that data, and therefore the flexibility of what form it can take when you're working with it versus when it goes downstream. That ability to have that conversation is really just key. And from that, your ability to get creative and create solutions for any of your problem cases really opens up.
And that's all about strategy, right, James?
Yeah,
A lot
definitely.
of
Absolutely.
organizations are racing. We're not trying to knock any other vendors that are out there, James, but they're really out there selling a off-the-shelf kind of solution where you buy it and you can do some button clicking and it's all figured out. But what you're suggesting is actually, if you know further upstream from the SaaS pieces, there's some strategy related questions that are really important for people to answer in that data ingestion phase, and that's an area where we can be helpful. And James, I do want to say that from an agency perspective, as I've been talking to city agencies, local agencies, housing agencies, workforce development, economic development, there's kind of a imperative right now in this particular environment to demonstrate outcomes, to keep data secure, right? So these questions around high quality data, even before you get to talking about AI, are increasingly important for reimbursement with government contracts, but also initially applying for grants as well. And this is important because, if I'm a listener hearing you kind of walk through the intentionality and strategy, even before you get to an off the shelf kind of solution, you say, why would I do that? Well, it's kind of a differentiator for frontline organizations when they're able to tell an agency the level of rigor that they're putting into the process of having the data clean and transforming it in a way that gets you to greater accuracy. And many of our listeners, James, I'm sure have tried to upload documents into ChatGPT, for example. I know I have. you can't upload more than 10 documents. So if you wanted to try and summarize quickly, you could do that in ChatGPT. One of the things you tell our team internally to watch out for, James, is you get a lot of what you call hallucination in the data, right? And so people think that, oh, that solves it. I've got this report. But when you're dealing with complex regulatory compliance environments where data accuracy matters, that approach is not going to cut it. James, could you talk a little bit about kind of your skepticism of the shortcuts that organizations are taking now, just uploading their stuff into ChatGPT as it relates to accuracy and quality data?
Absolutely. I don't mean to knock anybody's workflow, but I'm a developer and a skeptic, and everything needs to be tested. I come from game design, and if you're off on your specs, your game won't run, and that's no fun. So I um, think that there are a number of strategies that you can employ to get better results out of your LLMs, and making sure that it is sticking within the confines of a knowledge base to draw answers from. But I think that especially in areas where I've never worked personally in government, but I've had the privilege of being able to watch how it works. And I feel like for most agencies, for most initiatives, it really boils down to a few things, and those are wins, pretty much just wins operationally, or wins in terms of continuing what is working for more efficiently. And both of those things are powered a lot of the times by being able to quickly close the information and feedback loop on accurate impact information. And that's really, really hard. And that's why these folks are working really, really hard. And the hours in there are really, really long. And they're doing it passionately to hold up the pillars of our society. And that is a weight that could be lifted. And so these tools are important, and they are powerful in terms of that ability to give you that instant feedback. And so I like the term skepticism, because my goal is really to be a yes and skeptic, to say like, okay, how, not to just buck in the face of these, but how can we make sure that this is not taking any leaps in its processes. And
Because sometimes ChatGPT will add information to the
uh,
context of what you're searching for that's not actually in the data. It will add things there. It will take as you just described.
ChatGPT is it's trained on a huge amount of almost the entirety of the internet up to a few years ago. And so in just, in the core words that it uses to learn speech and text is also knowledge, and those words are kind of baked into the back of its brain. And so they're again, like I mentioned, a number of techniques. Retrieval augmented generation is a way of approaching post enrichment learning, or sorry, post training enrichment, or post training knowledge for the model. And yeah, there are a number of others of just making sure, saying like, hey, within this context, what am I doing? Asking this question. What do you think about this, that, and the other? That's better than just saying, hey, chat. What do you and all of the internet think about this or that? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And so I would say, James, what's great about the approach that you're taking as the chief solutions architect at CDX Data is, we're combining the speed, so we're still able to get quick results, but we spend more time up front with our clients on really working out what is the context specific insights, whether it's education or housing or workforce or healthcare, that's going to get us to a better end result with greater accuracy and being able to help get insights that are not just faster insights, but higher quality. So I see we're coming up on time, James, and we'll have many more conversations. There's some questions that we get, and we for the audience that's on the webinar with us today, but also those that will watch on YouTube later on. We form these webinars based on topics that we hear from our clients and prospective partners in the future. Our next webinar will probably talk a little bit about data privacy, which is increasingly important to a lot of folks on the front lines. I do want to say that if you listen to this discussion and you may be thinking, hey, I don't have a technical team, 5, 6, 7. You mentioned Netflix, James. Maybe they've got hundreds of software engineers and folks who are working on this ETL problem, cleaning and transformation problem. And our listeners may say, we don't have the resources for a team, of 100 people or even 10 people. And so CDX Community Dynamics, CDX Data, we deliver a managed service for organizations like yours. And we come out of the sector, and it's our our focus and commitment is to drive better outcomes in alignment with your mission. We support with the plan and design phase, but also with the build and migration and running and operating of an end-to-end data product lifecycle to support your internal team, but also external users, whether they be beneficiaries of your programs, government agencies, funders, you name it. And we would love to work with folks who are listening in if that's appealing. We are offering a free consultation conversation just to learn a little bit more about how you're attacking problems like data cleaning and transformation to be Gen AI ready. So with that, James, I want to see if you have any final thoughts or suggestions, recommendations for our audience that's here today, but those who may listen online later on.
No, I think you summed it up beautifully. I would just say, for the folks who are here with us now and are listening online, thank you for your time, and stay tuned in with the things that we will have coming out and coming down the pipe soon. I'm sure that if you do have an ETL pipe, we'd love to hear how you're solving some solutions or solving some problems. What are your solutions that you found valuable? And yeah, there might be a conversation down the line that pertains to your needs as well. So yeah, thank you for tuning in.